My family said I wasn't successful enough, so I proved them all wrong in the pettiest way. My whole life, my family looked down on me. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. Meanwhile, my golden child brother could do no wrong. But when they humiliated me at a family gathering, I decided I'd had enough. So I came up with the pettiest, most satisfying revenge. And let's just say, they never saw it coming. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Growing up, I was always the disappointment of the family. It didn't matter that I got good grades, that I worked hard, or that I was independent. My parents and relatives only had eyes for my older brother, Jake, their golden boy. He was the one who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, everything I did was either criticized, ignored, or mocked. "You need to be more like Jake," my mom would say, shaking her head whenever I shared something I was proud of. "He's really making something of himself." Jake had a high-paying job in finance, drove a luxury car, and lived in a penthouse apartment. I, on the other hand, had started my own business, something I was incredibly passionate about. But because I wasn't rolling in money right away, my family considered it a joke. My dad even told me once, "That little project of yours, it's cute, but maybe it's time to get a real job." No matter how hard I tried to explain that success takes time, they just waved me off. The worst part, every family gathering turned into a reminder of how unsuccessful I supposedly was. Jake would walk in with some expensive watch on his wrist, and my parents would beam at him like he'd just won the Nobel Prize. Meanwhile, I'd get a half-hearted, "Oh, you're still doing that little business thing?" I swallowed my frustration for years, telling myself that one day I'd prove them wrong. And then, at one particular family dinner, they pushed me too far. It was supposed to be a simple get-together, but as usual, the conversation turned to success, meaning Jake's success. My aunt gushed about how incredible it was that he had just bought another investment property. My mom chimed in saying, "We're so proud of him. He's just so responsible and driven." Then she turned to me with that same condescending smile. "And what about you, sweetheart? Still playing around with that? What is it again? A small business?" The way she said it, like I was some naive child chasing a silly dream, made my blood boil. Before I could even answer, Jake smirked and added, "Hey, at least she's trying. Not everyone can handle the real world, right?" The whole table laughed. That was it. That was the moment I decided. I was done being their punching bag. If they wanted to measure success by money and status, fine. I'd give them a reality check they'd never forget. And trust me, it was going to be petty as hell. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the way they had laughed at me, how my own family dismissed my hard work like it was some childish hobby. I had spent years biting my tongue, trying to prove myself with patience and resilience. But clearly, that approach wasn't working. They didn't respect effort. They only respected results. Well, fine. If they wanted success, I'd give them a version of it they couldn't ignore. I threw myself into my business like never before. I worked late nights, optimized my marketing strategies, and took every opportunity to grow. I cut out distractions, networked like crazy, and made sacrifices that most people wouldn't. It wasn't easy, and there were moments where I wanted to quit. But every time I thought about my family's smug faces, I pushed harder. And then, after months of relentless effort, something incredible happened. My business took off. Not just in a making decent money kind of way. No, it exploded. Orders flooded in, my social media blew up. I went from barely scraping by to hitting 6 figures in sales within a few months. And the best part? The industry I was in wasn't one that my family took seriously. They had always scoffed at online businesses, calling them unstable and unrealistic. But here I was outpacing their golden boy in earnings and success. Still, I didn't say a word to them. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment, the pettiest, most satisfying moment to make my move. And soon, the opportunity presented itself. A few months later, my parents decided to throw a massive family party. Everyone was invited, from distant relatives to close family friends. The reason? To celebrate Jake's latest achievement, some big promotion at work. The moment I got the invitation, I knew. This was it. This was when I'd show them all exactly how wrong they had been about me. I arrived at the party dressed to impress, not in a flashy way, just enough to look polished, confident, and undeniably successful. I kept my entrance low-key, casually greeting relatives as I made my way inside. The house was packed with guests singing Jake's praises. My mother practically glowed as she introduced him to people. "We're just so proud," she kept repeating. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. My father clinked his glass, calling for attention. "Let's take a moment to appreciate Jake," he announced. "He's worked so hard, and he's truly an example of success in this family." The room erupted in applause, and Jake grinned, clearly soaking it all in. Then, right on cue, someone turned to me. "And what about you? How's that little business of yours going?" I smiled. "Oh, it's going pretty well, actually. I just bought a new house." Silence. The kind that stretches a second too long, just enough for people to realize something just shifted. My mom's smile wavered, my dad's eyebrows shot up, and Jake? His expression was priceless. "What do you mean, a house?" my aunt asked, clearly confused. I took my phone out and, with the most casual energy in the world, pulled up the listing. "Yeah, I needed more space. Business has been good." I turned the screen toward them, revealing a sleek, modern home that made Jake's fancy apartment look like a shoebox. The silence turned into hushed murmurs. My dad coughed awkwardly. My mom blinked like she had just seen a ghost. And Jake? He looked like he had swallowed a lemon. Oh, but I wasn't done yet. I decided I wouldn't just sit back and let them define my worth. If success was their measure of respect, then I'd play the game, but on my terms. The next family gathering was in a few months, a big reunion at my parents' house. That was my deadline. I needed a plan, something that would make them regret every condescending word, but also something that would bring me genuine success. Because deep down, I didn't just want to prove them wrong, I wanted to prove to myself that I was capable of more. I started by analyzing what I was truly passionate about. The corporate world never appealed to me, but I'd always loved working with my hands, creating something from nothing. That's when it hit me. I'd turned my side hustle into a full-fledged business. For years I had been making custom furniture in my free time, selling a few pieces here and there. What if I scaled it up? I knew it wouldn't be easy, but that was the point. I dedicated every spare moment to refining my craft, reaching out to potential customers, and building a brand. I revamped my social media, showcasing my best work and offering limited commissions. And then, something incredible happened. A viral post. One of my designs caught fire online, and within weeks I had more orders than I could handle. I hired a small team to help, expanded my workshop, and before I knew it, I was running a legitimate business. The irony? I was probably making more than some of my successful family members now, but I wasn't satisfied with just financial success. I wanted the moment of reckoning. So I planned something for the family reunion that no one would see coming. The reunion was creeping closer, and my plan was coming together perfectly. I didn't just want to show up and say, "Hey, look at me now." No, that would be too easy. I wanted them to feel the weight of their own words, to make them realize how wrong they had been without me having to spell it out. So I kept quiet about my growing business. No social media bragging, no hint of success, just radio silence. I wanted them to think I was still the same underachiever they had dismissed. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, things were taking off. My furniture business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. I had a wait list of clients, a feature in a major home design magazine, and an upcoming collaboration with a well-known interior designer. The best part? One of my clients happened to be a distant cousin, someone who would definitely be at the reunion, and they had no idea that the company they were raving about was mine. The day of the reunion arrived, and I walked in like nothing had changed. The usual routine started. Questions about work, little digs about my untraditional career path, exaggerated stories of their own achievements. I played along, nodding, smiling, letting them believe I was still that struggling relative they could feel superior to. And then, right on cue, my cousin started talking about the stunning, handcrafted dining set they had just bought. "It's from this amazing new brand, super high-end, all custom work. Apparently they're blowing up right now," they gushed. My uncle, the same one who once told me to get a real job, perked up. "Really? What's the name of the company?" My cousin pulled up the Instagram page and showed the family. Silence, then confusion, then sheer disbelief. Because right there, on the profile, was my name. The silence stretched for a moment too long, thick with disbelief. My uncle blinked at the screen, his brows furrowing as if trying to make sense of the reality in front of him. My cousin, oblivious to the tension, kept scrolling. "Yeah, their work is insane. Super exclusive, though. Apparently the waiting list is months long." I watched the gears turn in my family's heads. My aunt, who had always scoffed at my little woodworking hobby, finally spoke. "Wait, this is your company?" Her voice wavered between incredulity and something that almost sounded like respect. I let a slow smile spread across my face. Yeah, I said, as casually as I could. I started it a few years ago. It kinda took off. That was the understatement of the year, but I wasn't about to hand them my whole success story on a silver platter. If they wanted the details, they'd have to ask. My uncle cleared his throat. You mean to tell me you made that dining set? I nodded, feigning nonchalance. And a lot of other pieces. Actually, I've got a collaboration coming up with a major interior designer. I watched their expressions shift. Shock, confusion, and something else. Was it pride? No, that would be too generous. But it was definitely a realization. They had underestimated me. Badly. Then, the cherry on top. My cousin, still blissfully unaware of the family drama, laughed. Man, I wish I had known sooner. I paid a fortune for that set. I shrugged, biting back a smirk. Yeah, custom work isn't cheap. I let the weight of my words sink in. The same people who once looked down on my career now sat around a table, realizing they couldn't afford my work without stretching their wallets. It was poetic justice, and I wasn't going to let them forget it. My father, who had been unusually quiet through all of this, finally spoke up. His voice was measured, but there was an edge to it. So, you've really built something big. It wasn't a question, more like a reluctant admission. I met his gaze, searching for any trace of the usual dismissal, but for the first time, I saw something else. Uncertainty, maybe even regret. Yeah, I said simply. I have. My mother shifted in her chair, her lips pressing into a thin line. She had always been the one to remind me that traditional success meant a corporate job, a stable salary, a title that looked good at dinner parties. But now she was sitting in front of a tangible product of my work, a table she had unknowingly admired, and realizing that maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong. A tense silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of my cousin tapping at his phone. Damn, he muttered. You've got like 50,000 followers on Instagram and a ton of orders? He looked up at me, finally putting two and two together. Dude, you're actually rich. I chuckled. I do okay. That was an understatement. My business wasn't just successful, it was thriving. I had contracts with high-end designers, my pieces were featured in magazines, and I had a waiting list that stretched for months. But I wasn't going to sit here and flex on my family, not in words at least. I wanted them to feel it. My aunt, the same one who had once told me I'd regret not having a real job, suddenly cleared her throat. You know, she said, forcing a smile, your cousin is actually looking for a new dining table. Maybe you could give us a little family discount? I almost laughed out loud. Of course she would say that. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to consider it. Oh man, I sighed. I'd love to help, but we're booked solid for the next 6 months, maybe even longer. High demand, you know? Her face fell. I knew she had expected me to jump at the chance to prove my worth to the family, but I wasn't about to give them a shortcut into my success. They had written me off for years. Now they could wait just like everyone else. The shift in the room was almost palpable. My aunt's smile wavered as she realized I wasn't about to hand out favors just because we shared a last name. My cousin looked back down at his phone, scrolling through my work like he was suddenly seeing me in a completely different light. My mother, however, was still processing. So, she said, her voice quieter now, you're really that busy? I nodded, sipping my drink slowly. Busier than I ever imagined. People appreciate good craftsmanship. And, well, turns out success doesn't just come in the way you all expected. There it was, the thing I had been waiting to say for years, and for the first time in my life, they had no immediate counter to dismiss it, no lectures about stability, no condescending nods about how I'd figure it out eventually. They were sitting in front of undeniable proof that I had not only figured it out, but that I had built something that exceeded their expectations in a way they could no longer ignore. My uncle, who had mostly stayed out of the conversation, finally spoke. So, what do you charge for a custom piece? I smirked. Depends on the piece, but let's just say my cheapest custom table starts at 5 figures. Silence. Pure golden silence. My cousin almost choked on his drink. My aunt's eyes widened. And my mother? Her fingers tightened around her napkin. I could see the battle playing out in her head, pride clashing with the years of telling me I was making a mistake. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't here to rub it in their faces. But I was here to let them sit with it. Well, I finally said, setting my glass down, it's been great catching up with everyone, but I've got an early morning, big shipment going out tomorrow. I stood, smoothing my shirt, and looked at my mother. Maybe next time, you'll believe in me before waiting for proof. She didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. and that was enough for now. As I walked out of that restaurant, a strange feeling settled over me. Not just satisfaction, but closure. For years, I had let their opinions define my worth. I had spent too many nights wondering if I was making a mistake, if maybe they were right, if success only counted when it came in a certain package. But tonight, I realized something powerful. I didn't need their validation. I never did. I didn't prove them wrong for them. I did it for me. The drive home felt lighter. I wasn't carrying the weight of their judgments anymore. I wasn't desperate for their approval, and I wasn't bitter about their doubts. If anything, I almost felt sorry for them, stuck in a mindset that measured success in titles and salaries instead of fulfillment and passion. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was careful, like she was still figuring out how to talk to me now. "I looked up your work," she admitted. "It's beautiful." I smiled, letting the words settle. It wasn't an apology, not quite, but it was something. "Thanks, Mom." She hesitated before adding, "Maybe, sometime. You could show me how it all works?" And just like that, the walls weren't completely gone, but they had a crack, and that was enough. Before you go, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now, see you in the next one.